It was late afternoon when the sound of a piano echoed through the grand halls of the Bennett mansion, soft, pure, and filled with emotion. The notes weren't perfect, but they carried something far more powerful, kindness. In that moment, a blind little girl smiled brighter than she had in months, her tiny fingers dancing across the keys beside someone she barely knew. And standing silently behind them, a man who thought he'd seen it all, her father, a wealthy CEO, felt his heart break and heal all at once. Hey everyone, welcome to Soul Moments Story, where every tale reminds us that kindness still exists in this world. If this story touches your heart, don't forget toned in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more stories of compassion, love, and hope to life. The Bennett mansion sat on the edge of a quiet neighborhood in upstate New York, a place where silence felt heavy. Inside those tall walls lived Evelyn Bennett, a 7-year-old girl who hadn't smiled much since the accident that took her sight, and her mother, 2 years ago. Her father, Thomas Bennett, was a powerful man. The kind people read about in business magazines. CEO of a growing tech empire. To the world, he had everything: success, wealth, respect. But behind closed doors, his home was cold. He spent his days in meetings and his nights buried in paperwork, avoiding the one thing he didn't know how to face: his daughter's pain. After going through several caretakers who couldn't handle Evelyn's silence, Thomas decided to hire a new maid, someone to keep the house running and maybe help with Evelyn's needs. That's when Maria Lopez entered their lives. Maria was a woman in her early 30s, soft-spoken and gentle. She'd recently moved from a small town after losing her job at a local diner. Her resume wasn't impressive, but something in her voice, calm and sincere, made the housekeeper recommend her. Thomas barely glanced at her during the interview. He just signed the papers and said, "Do your job well, and we won't have problems." Maria nodded, grateful for the opportunity. Her first day was quiet. The house was spotless, yet it felt empty. The only sound came from Evelyn's room, where a faint hum of music played from a small speaker. Maria peeked in and saw the little girl sitting near a piano, running her fingers over the keys but not pressing them. "Do you play?" Maria asked softly. Evelyn turned her head slightly. "I used to. But it doesn't sound the same anymore." Maria didn't push further. She just smiled and said, "I like piano too. My mama taught me a few songs when I was your age." For a moment, Evelyn said nothing. Then she whispered, "Really?" That was the beginning of something small, a flicker of connection. The days that followed were gentle and unremarkable on the surface, but Maria had a gift, not just for cleaning, but for caring quietly. She never treated Evelyn like she was fragile. Instead, she spoke to her like a friend, describing the flowers in the garden, the color of the sunset, or the way the rain made the windows shimmer. Little by little, Evelyn began to talk again. One afternoon, Maria was dusting near the piano when Evelyn walked in, her little hands stretched out, finding her way to the bench. "Maria," she said softly, "can you help me remember the song Clair de Lune? My mom used to play it." Maria froze for a moment. She wasn't a professional pianist, but she remembered that song. It had been her mother's favorite too. She sat beside Evelyn and placed her hands gently on the keys. "Let's try it together." Their first attempt was messy, notes stumbled, rhythm lost, but there was something beautiful in their mistakes. The melody grew steadier as Evelyn followed Maria's voice, listening, feeling each note. For the first time in years, laughter filled that lonely house. Unbeknownst to them, Thomas had returned home early that day. He paused by the living room, briefcase in hand, frozen by the sound drifting down the hall. He hadn't heard that piano since his wife died. He walked closer, quietly, until he saw them, Maria guiding Evelyn's hands across the keys, her voice calm and encouraging, while Evelyn smiled, truly smiled. Something in his chest tightened. He didn't interrupt. He just stood there, unseen, and listened. That night, Thomas couldn't concentrate on his work. The sound of that laughter haunted him, in the best way. He realized he couldn't remember the last time he'd made his daughter laugh. The next morning, he asked his assistant to clear his schedule for the afternoon. When she asked why, he simply said, "Family matter." At lunchtime, he surprised Evelyn by joining her in the dining room. Her face lit up. "Daddy, Maria and I learned a new song yesterday," she said, her voice bubbling with excitement. Thomas smiled, a bit awkwardly, and nodded. "I heard. You're quite the musician." Evelyn giggled. "Maria helped me. She's really good." Thomas looked across the table at Maria, who immediately looked down, embarrassed. "She is," he said softly. "Thank you." Maria just smiled. She's the real musician, sir. I just follow her lead. Over the next few weeks, the mansion slowly came alive again. Evelyn's laughter became part of the home's rhythm. Maria helped her bake cookies, read stories aloud, and of course, play piano. The bond between them grew so natural that even Thomas began spending more time at home. He started coming to the living room just to listen, pretending to read while secretly watching them play. One Friday evening, as the golden light of sunset filled the house, Maria and Evelyn were practicing a song for Evelyn's upcoming school performance. Evelyn's tiny hands trembled as she played. I'm scared I'll mess up, she whispered. Maria knelt beside her. Sweetheart, it's okay to make mistakes. Music isn't about being perfect, it's about sharing what's inside your heart. Evelyn nodded, comforted. Thomas, standing quietly at the doorway again, swallowed hard. He remembered saying almost the same thing to his late wife years ago when she was nervous before a concert. It was as if Maria had reached into a part of his heart he thought was long gone. After that night, Thomas asked Maria to join them for dinner. She hesitated, she was the maid, after all, but he insisted. Over soup and bread, Thomas asked her about her life. She told them about growing up in a small town, about her mother who loved music, and how she lost her when she was just a teenager. Music kept me close to her, she said. It's how I remember love. Evelyn reached across the table and held her hand. That's how I remember my mom too. Thomas looked at them both, two people who had lost so much, yet still chose kindness over bitterness. It humbled him. The day of the school recital finally came. The auditorium was filled with parents, children, and teachers. Thomas sat in the front row, his heart racing. When Evelyn walked onto the stage, guided by Maria, the crowd fell silent. She sat at the piano, took a deep breath, and began to play. The melody of Claire de Lune floated through the room, fragile yet full of warmth. Each note carried love, courage, and healing. When she finished, the audience erupted in applause. Thomas stood up, tears in his eyes, clapping harder than anyone. Later that night, as they returned home, Thomas turned to Maria. You've done more for my daughter, and for me, than I can ever repay, he said. Maria smiled gently. You don't need to repay kindness, Mr. Bennett. You just pass it on. From that day forward, the mansion was never silent again. Thomas spent more time with Evelyn, learning to play piano with her, rediscovering what truly mattered. Maria continued working there, but she was more than an employee, she was family. The story of a maid and a blind little girl became a quiet reminder that kindness doesn't need grand gestures. Sometimes it's found in the soft press of piano keys, in patience, in showing up when someone needs you most. And for Thomas Bennett, a man who once believed success was everything, kindness taught him how to truly see again.